All right. What happened?
Undressed.
Oh, yes. No.
And
Not
get
everybody
something
knows
from
how
it.
to watch film.
Right. The kicker was like, "Stall me out, man. I'm not that bad. I don't just kick it 15 yards out of bounds. Come on now."
Y'all need to be up at 7 a.m. and you better have all the razzle dazzle possible. Hey, good morning, good morning, good morning. Oh my gosh. So much to talk about. I don't know if we have enough time. Coley Mick in the house. Coley, what's up, man? Good morning.
How's it going?
Salutations.
Good day to you, sir. Good.
Yeah. I mean, as 49er fans, how are you doing?
It's tough. It's Groundhog Day. This is 6 of the last 12 NFC titles we've been in. We've got no rings to show for it. It's tough.
It was a good game until the first quarter, 13-minute and 15-second mark. After that, wow, they were donezo. As a professional analyst, it was impossible for them to compete with them sustaining that many injuries to their quarterback position.
How hard would it have been,
bro,
to be like, hey, Debo, we're running Wildcat the rest of the game? Obviously, they've never practiced that or practiced it enough, but it would have given them more of a chance.
More of a chance?
They had zero. They had zero as it stood.
No, you see, I think that's a very wise, fan-like response.
Definitely.
Right. There's no playbook. There's no plays on that menu of plays. There's nothing to say, hey, in case the backup to the backup goes down and then the other backup comes in, you'll be okay. Here's that. Right. Oh, that game plan? Hold on. There it is. There it is. You know what it is? This is the playbook right here. You see it? Yeah. Look, let me show you. Play 1.
SOL.
Play 2. Play 15. Play 35. There's no playbook for that. There's no plays for a lack of a quarterback who can't throw. That's like saying, what's the game plan for all your running backs break their legs? Like, what do you mean? There's no game plan. And it sucks. Yeah. Listen, what I saw Williams do, the lineman, bro, I thought that should have happened probably about 2 quarters ago.
Get me out of here. I'm done.
Listen, it was so discouraging. So for me, like trying to put it in my own, like, not trying to make it about me, but putting it like, what is it like? Take us through what is it like in a huddle? It's devastating.
Yeah.
Right? To get up in the huddle, to line up, and to have guy and a really you hear the play come in, and you have it is no possible way this is going to be successful. Your backup quarterback gets hurt, then the backup he gets a concussion, and so the guy who can't throw very far, and everybody knows it, and you got to line up and make calls and adjustments. Hey, they're shifting and they're doing all that stuff. They're bringing a house. And you got to act like you know what you're going to do. And that's so discouraging.
Especially on the road. Like even for week 4, that's tough, let alone the NFC Championship game.
Oh, bro, it's terrible. It was terrible because it happened so early in the game. You knew they had zero chance.
Right. And it took Philly a while to capitalize, which was shocking. Like it was 7-7 into the second quarter. If it wasn't for
that's because the defense, right?
Right.
The defense got worn down. That shows no matter how good your defense is, defenses are going to slow down. Teams are going to stack play after play on them. I would say like the first play of the game. The first, big play of the game, Devontae Smith, the Slim Reaper, that catch going on the sideline wasn't a catch. They go in there and run a new play. Man, that's just strategy, right? You can't blame that on officiating. you can't blame that on replays unless you're the opposite team, right? You know, when you're the opposite team and it affects you in that way, yes, you can. But realistically, that's just the flow of the game. They got you. You got to take that L and keep it moving, right? Let's be honest. That play, I don't think that play has a significant impact on the game based on how things worked itself out, through the remainder of the game. Like
Well,
that one play, though. What are you trying to say? That play, if they take that back, that maybe he wouldn't get hit. I mean,
it just changes. For sure. Well, I can't say he won't get hit if Shanahan. If Shanahan the rest of the game doesn't block Hassan Reddick, like he's sending backup tight ends at him to not even but put him on an island.
Well, first of all, tight end missed the block, wide receiver missed the block.
Mm-hmm.
Bro,
do you think? Because I'm thinking about this as we're saying it.
Two people missed the block.
You'll see defensive ends, and we'll talk about even a defensive tackle and Chris Jones a little bit later, but you'll see defensive linemen move around the line to get mismatches.
Yes.
Will we ever see a world where you would move a Trent Williams from left to right if Hassan Reddick? I've heard a lot. It's like throwing with opposite hands, playing left tackle versus right tackle. It's
left tackle play right tackle. I never played it, but let me play one on the podcast. I think it is difficult. It is because here's why. Again, I said I never play tackle, but hand-to-hand combat, right? Blocking, you're either a good blocker or you're not a good blocker, right? But whichever side you're on, there are little nuances of the game that you may not notice, right? And so playing left tackle, right tackle, there is a big difference. But it also has to do with dominant hand. So if you're playing left tackle, left anything, most likely, which one is going to be your dominant hand? Or the hand that you're used to using most of the time, which is if you're on the left side, you're going to be used to using, and tell me if I'm correct, Brian used to, our producer, he used to be a offensive lineman. And so I'm just guessing, your left hand, you may be right-handed. I am right-handed. Fun fact. But I am left-hand dominant. That's why I wear my watch on my right hand. Which is why I primarily played X in my career. Because if you notice, I was able to stiff arm people with both hands, but when I really dominated was the ball was in my left hand. And I would murk people with my right hand. And so playing tackle, left tackle, right hand dominant, whatever, or right-handed, but you're still leading because you're in a stance like this. You're still leading, and right? And then they follow through. Is that right? Is that technique correct? Okay. Yay. Now, there's some unpaid offensive line coaches who's sitting in their mama's couch, right? That's going to watch this and say, Steve, that's it correct. Well, get your own damn podcast, and then we'll figure out and see what else people say. Okay. Then you're on the right side, right? Same thing. Boom, boom. Because if you see, they do that a lot. And then the hand follows through.
Right.
So you don't need to move Trent Williams to the right. If Jawan Jenkins and the backup tight end, what's their assignment? Chip, route second, and tight end. He's helping, giving what they call presence to the tackle, and then going to the end, Hassan Reddick, but Jawan missed it, and then which accelerated, so he gets untouched, and so the tackle / tight end in that position is expected. Okay, let me give presence, then go out. Well, it's scot-free.
Yeah.
And so that was a mental error on everybody's part. And that's what you said. If everybody's if they're not winning their individual battles, then the whole war is lost. And that mistake cost them opportunity to have a fighting chance to go to the Super Bowl. Bro, fighting chance. Mm-hmm. Because after he gets hurt, they have zero fighting chance.
Yeah. And it looked very, I mean, those first two possessions.
Ugly.
Well, it was ugly, but those first two possessions, I thought you saw how ready and almost aggressive those coaches were being.
To each other.
Yeah, well, it was like the 49ers and Shanahan don't challenge the Devonta Smith catch.
Well, they didn't have time to either, though.
I mean, it was down the field. You definitely have to be quick with it, but it would have. You saw the Kansas City Chiefs challenge early that Kadarius Toney non-catch. That was a bad challenge, but they were aggressive with it. And then you saw the Eagles challenge the sack fumble on Purdy because they originally ruled that a forward pass. And since the Eagles correctly covered the ball, I don't know why there are so many loose balls bouncing around throughout the season that people just never pick up. You never know. I'm shocked people don't pick it up every single time, but the Eagles did. They got the clear recovery and they got the ball back. Now they didn't score, but I think that tells the team like, oh yeah, coach is here too. It's not just us. We're all focused. True. Whereas Shanahan Devonta doesn't make the catch. He's telling his guys like, hey, let's go. Even if you don't see the replay on the Jumbotron yet, you see him making some sort of hand motion like, hey, let's hurry up, boys. Just throw the flag. And if it's wrong, it's wrong.
Yeah, I mean, hindsight's 2020, and I agree with you, right? It's always easier to do it, obviously.
Tuesday
afternoon after seeing all the replays of how, what, when, and all the different 9 million different views, and this is foolish, and you should have did this, you should have did that, but there's so many things that happen in the game, and even the replay wasn't even clear. They had to show you like 9 different camera views in there to be able to see the right one, because even the announcers are like, oh, it looks like a catch. I'm not sure. Well, you can't see. And then it was like the 10th camera after you come out of commercial break to show it after they've already scored, which is in television world. In the real world, it was like 5 minutes later. In television world, that was like 15 minutes later.
Right.
Right. And then on Twitter sphere, right? It was like, oh man, I saw that story. That story was 2 years ago. Right. It's just because there was so much action happening. Man, the 49ers, but one of the things that I was sitting there watching the game, and the first thing popped in my mind, and I think people are doing it, and they will do it throughout this whole offseason, is people are going to now start to put Kyle Shanahan in that category of kind of like what his dad was in with the Denver Broncos. Will he ever win the big one?
Oh, yeah.
Can he ever win the big one? Right? I don't think it's fair. Like, you have no, like, in what world do you practice? Hey, all of my quarterbacks are going to get injured.
Right.
Throughout the season, and in the NFC Championship game, we're going to lose all of our quarterbacks. But it's going to be on me to figure it out and have a game plan.
Yeah, I don't know that people are going to pin this game solely on.
Well,
what I'm going to say is this has been happening since 28-3, and he wasn't even the head coach then. But people do still criticize how he called that Falcons offense down the stretch. He had Matt Ryan doing 5-7 step dropbacks, just trying to run out the clock, and that, of course, aided them losing the game.
No, but here's the thing: did the defense stop anybody?
The Falcons defense?
Yeah.
I mean, they had the Patriots had the short fields
in the second half. I'm just asking.
No, it is the second half. I'm trying to remember all the scoring drives because I know
the Falcons, like Edelman makes an unbelievable catch.
Mm-hmm.
They're sitting in zone coverage. Somebody can cover him, right?
Oh yeah, I mean he's got someone on his back. following him. That was an awful throw. That was still an insane throw.
But my point is here's what I'm going to play today. I'm going to play devil's advocate. I'm going to go against everything you're saying and go, okay, that's great, but what about the corner that didn't cover?
No, for sure.
What about the kicker that didn't make the kick? What about the long snapper who gave the holder a bad snap? What about the guard that got beat? What about the wide receiver that got pressed up at the line? What about the receiver that jumped up, missed the ball? What about Jawan Jenkins missing a block and then the tackle, the tight end missing a block? Like I'm just throwing all of those out there because so many people are now complaining about so many things. And one of the things that we fail to always, especially as fans, always miss. Hey, like, that Pro Bowler that guy's blocking? He's pretty darn good. Maybe. Slightly. He's making $30 or $20 million. He's not making it because he's wearing a green beanie.
Well, with Shanahan, it's like, I think there's a ton of value, and we're in this culture right now where it's ring dominated. How many rings do you have? I blame basketball.
Oh yeah. I've been hearing that one too. If you don't have any Super Bowl, that means you can't talk, right?
Yeah, but it's. I think there's a ton of value in a coach that always has you in the conversation, which Shanahan does. He's all preseason. The 49ers will always be in the conversation. Who's going to be there standing at the end because of Shanahan?
Yeah.
The last 7 weeks when Purdy was cooking, Shanahan was getting a ton of credit. But then when the 49ers fall short again, like I said, 6 of the last 12 NFC championships, 0 rings to show for it. I don't think it's unfair to be like, what does it take to get them over the top? Obviously, this year, brutal. They had no chance against the Eagles because of the quarterback situation. Yeah. But this isn't the one time they've been this far. This is a repeat of history in a lot of people's eyes.
It is a repeat of history. But how about maybe you're playing a Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl, and maybe that's, you're playing a pretty darn good team.
Definitely.
Right? How about the fact that, even with Andy Reid got a lot of flack. What have, besides Doug Peterson, Sirianni, when Andy Reid was there, he took a quarterback, Michael Vick, he's coming out of prison and he balls. Mm-hmm. Donovan McNabb, look what Donovan McNabb did after he left the Philadelphia Eagles. He wasn't great after that.
No.
I mean, he declined dramatically. There's a ton of guys that if you put, even people in Buffalo, our national media is talking about Buffalo. Sean McVay, what is he going to do with the Buffalo Bills? This may be the end for Brandon Beane. Like, tell me a coach right now that's out in the street, that's interviewing, that you say, okay, I'm going to get rid of Brandon Beane, I'm going to get rid of Sean McVay, and I'm going to
McDermott.
Sean McDermott. I'm going to add this guy there, and he's going to make them so much better. Who is that coach right now?
No one that comes to mind. No one that's just openly available.
That you're like, I'm going to insert this guy. Like, I'm just throwing out names. Like, let's just go through current coaches. So if you take Ron Rivera off the Commanders and put him on the Buffalo Bills, do they win the Super Bowl?
No.
Dennis Allen?
No.
Josh McDaniels?
Of course not.
Okay. Dan Campbell?
It's hard to say yes because he himself has never done it, but that would be terrifying.
That's my point is there's some things going on that we don't know about, but there's reasons why, and it has to do with sometimes, how about the other team? How about they got they've executed a better game plan for that one day. The San Francisco 49ers executed a better game plan the week before, obviously, and go in there with Josh Johnson as the backup and Brock Purdy, and they just they got a string of bad luck.
Horrible luck. And I do think most
people. And then
people...
you see that basically Brock Purdy had he's got to have a Tommy John surgery.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, he just, he went in there and, he cheesed up. Like, he was really out there. Like, when you over there, when you got guys reading people's lips, pause, on the television, and they're going, I can't throw it. It hurts. Like, wow. Like, I even saw Debo. Debo was like, how many reverses can I run?
I'm trying to enjoy my off season at this point. I'm not trying to be rehabbing.
Yeah, he looked like though I was taking myself in there and I was like, man, that sucks. That really sucks to be in the game where no matter what you have dialed up, it ain't gonna work.
I mean, it sucked to watch because it was just like, well, here comes 3-and-out punt. And then the Eagles weren't moving the ball for a while. So it was just like, what's happening? Like this game, the punts are hitting wires, maybe. Like it was
actually, there's no confirmation that ball hit the wire. Even though the trajectory and the velocity changed, maybe it hit an invisible bird. Who knows? But all I know is there's no evidence that it hit a wire.
The kicker was like, stall me out, man. I'm not that bad. I don't just kick it 15 yards out of bounds. Come on now.
And it was spiraling, and then it hit something that was not there, and then it went like this, like it hit something. But hey, whatever.
Well, we talk about like players on the other side. They deserve credit. How about what the Eagles have done? The Eagles were in the Super Bowl 5 years ago. They have 6 people still on that roster on this roster. One of them's Jake Elliott, the plays kicker. So it's mostly an entirely new roster. Yeah. And one guy you see, and this is something I wanted to ask you about, especially as we head into the offseason, Hassan Reddick was a top 5, top 3 defensive end edge rusher this year. Horribly miscast in Arizona. The Panthers last year.
He was out of position in Arizona.
Right, that miscast. They were playing him off-ball linebacker, and I think it's last year in Arizona, last year in Carolina.
Last year in Carolina. Last year in Carolina, they felt for whatever reason, the powers that be, for whatever reason, felt like, what we saw out of him at that moment, right? And I say we, meaning like just analysts, what we saw out of him, that was the best you were going to get.
Right.
Right. And obviously that's not the case. Like one of the things that I heard was, I'll be interested to see how he does in Philadelphia because all he could really do is rush. And they try to do some exotic things sometimes, and it'll be interesting to see how he adjusts. Adjusted very well. They put his hand in the ground, and he's a hybrid guy, right? He's and I'm not saying he's Von Miller. I'm saying that he's a hybrid guy where he's not the 6'5", 250 pounds. He's a hybrid guy. He's a put his hand down in the dirt, get after the quarterback. He's what Josh Allen, how the Jags should be using Josh Allen, but they're running a 3-4, not a 4-3.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Josh Allen because that's kind of my question. Like for other teams, how I guess hard is it to identify a guy and be like, I bet if we put his hand in the dirt, or I bet even like Kyle Van Noy coming from the Lions to the Patriots, they changed where he played on the field and it changed his career. So it's like how important and how difficult is that pro scouting? Like I think we talk about scouting college all the time, but how important is that next step of scouting? Because these guys sometimes are only on other teams for 2 years. They come available pretty often.
So this is funny because I've started doing my college guys, right? And one of the guys I'm looking at right now that I'm really just kind of, what's the kid from TCU? Johnson.
Quentin Johnson.
Quentin Johnson, right? Man, one of the craziest things, I'm watching him, and people are saying he's fast, he's uber athletic, he's this, he's that, and I'm watching him, and I like him, and I depending on which highlight I watch, I like him, but then I can watch the next highlight and I don't. Just breaking it down real quick, real quick. This is how it goes. Watching him against Georgia, he breaks away. I think it was Georgia, breaks away. He's running like his feet hurts on that touchdown, right? They were getting blown out. Man, he catches a pass, and he's running down the sideline, and he is literally running like he has two left feet. His feet are hurting. And I'm like, he doesn't look as fast as I expected. But then you watch him, he's in a dark, they have so many different jerseys, but he's in all black, the all black with the purple and the helmet. And he catches a pass going across the middle. He runs a basic, and he's fast. But then he jumps up, and he doesn't high point the ball like up here. He catches it like right here. And I'm like, oh, he's athletic in that one. But then the next play, he doesn't look athletic. Right? And so that's where, almost where the pro days, the combine, you got to watch so much film to really get an understanding. What kind of player is he? And what type of offense and scheme will he be good in?
Yeah.
And you really don't know. Because you could be Joe Judd coaching the Patriots and be Joe Judd the head coach, and you can literally be in two different positions in two different organizations and get the same result, which is average. And then you get a Brian Daboll and his staff, and Daniel Jones looks crazy good.
Mm-hmm.
And we could blame it on Joe Judd, or we could say, hey, maybe Brian Daboll is just a better coach, which is possibly highly likely. That's true.
Right.
But what they did in the offseason, what they had to do in the offseason, how they were able to build up his confidence, how much confidence did he not have with Joe Judd for various reasons and various stories that I won't get into, that you just don't really know. And so it's hard to really measure a young man, right? There was some reports that I heard about Michael Gallup. He's not very smart. That's what I heard. He's not very smart. I'm like, really? Every time I've talked to him, man, he seems pretty sharp. And then you find out he wasn't really taught how to watch film in college. So is that Michael Gallup that he's stupid or not very sharp? Or is it maybe the fact that his college coach at the time just didn't equip him and guide him into becoming and teaching him how to be, develop him how to be a pro? So is it Michael Gallup's fault that he doesn't know what he doesn't know? Or is it maybe the guy who's a state employee for the college who is maybe doing an average job?
Yeah, bare minimum.
Bare minimum. And then he goes, prior to the injury, he goes out with the Dallas Cowboys when he was playing, and you go, man, he can play some ball.
Right.
I'm throwing out all these scenarios because these are real scenarios as an analyst, as a ball player, that I hear that you'll go, wow. Like, you will be amazed at how many coaches coach that you'll go, wow, I didn't even know he did that. And then you will be amazed at how many coaches don't coach.
Yeah.
All they're doing is going, all right, I write 17, sweep, Dino. All right, Dino, this guy, you got the through, you got the dig, you got the flat, you got the chip, and their play. They're just teaching off the plays. They're just teaching plays and not like developing young men to say, all right, here's the responsibilities. Like, I know Jacksonville, I heard this story. Jacksonville, in Doug Peterson, what he did was with all three of his guys, the wide receivers, all the wide receivers were required to learn all the positions. So no matter what, they can master the playbook.
Right.
I can tell you right now, there are teams and coaches who say, you are only playing X, you are only playing Z, and then the backups, you guys are required to know multiple positions. Mm-hmm. Starters, you X and Z, that's the only position you know. Z and X, that's the only position you know. Third and fourth guys, you are responsible to learn everything. And if you don't learn everything, we'll find somebody who will. Like that are some coaches.
I feel like that's most coaches.
Yes, but then why are you going to limit an X and a Z to only play outside when they probably are better? And because that's what people say. They fit into a box and they say, this is who you are, right? Look, we only right here, right, left. That's all you play, right and left. But then all the other guys, you have to learn all the other positions.
When you say watch film, I feel like a lot of people, you see it in movies and TV shows about football and stuff like that. Not everyone watches film and
not
gets
everybody knows
from
how
it.
to watch film.
Right. So when you said it about Michael, or what we've heard about Michael Gallup and not being taught how to watch film, I've heard plenty of guys, excuse me, who say like, yeah, I don't watch film because it's like I don't gain anything from it, and it's like that's because you probably weren't taught. I'm not saying like I know how to break down film. Of course I don't, but like, what were some things that stood out to you watching, like when you first started? Like, oh, I'm actually now watching, not just watching film, but I actually am learning something from it.
I was taught by my wide receiver coach who recruited me out of college, Frank Reich, who taught me how to watch film. Like he would. When we watch film, he would say, what do you see? I was like, I just see a dude running around. How's he lined up? What's his alignment? What's the corner doing? What's the safety doing? What's the linebacker doing? Cover 2, how are they lined up? Cover 3, how are they lined up? Will they switch to a cover 6 or they do this? How are they lined up? Like they're lined up in this when they snap the ball, boom, they do this, right? Great example of it. So how you watch film. Let's talk about Kansas City Chiefs and the Cincinnati Bengals. That was an unbelievable game. You're talking about chess, checkers, chess, Uno, Monopoly. It was every complicated and simple game all in one that was so attractive. That was the most sexiest football game that I've watched this year in the playoffs. You know why?
Why?
Because you had offensive and defensive-minded coach throwing the kitchen sink every other play. Mm-hmm. Great example. I went back and watched Cincinnati Bengals play the Kansas City Chiefs back in 2021. Patrick Mahomes was running for his life. Week 17. I mean, constantly under pressure, running around, off-schedule throws. He was out there, right? Then the last week, the last time they played before the playoffs, who won? Cincinnati Bengals. Patrick Mahomes was still running around, off schedule. But one of the things Spag did that I thought was interesting, he played a different defense. He played a more conventional zone defense, kind of did that and set up the Cincinnati Bengals to the point why the Kansas City Chiefs were so good in the first half, having 4 or 5 sacks immediately, and Joe Burrow was under duress, is they had number 32 line up, and he lined up in the hole. And so he made the center make an adjustment. So they're like, all right, overload, slide left, Louis. So he slides left. That puts Chris Jones on a rookie tackle who the week before did pretty good. But he did pretty good because that wasn't Von Miller. That wasn't Chris Jones.
Right.
And they lined up Chris Jones all at different positions because that lined them up to say, you cannot tell us where the strength is of the D line, which is Ricky or Red or Randy or Roger, that's sliding right. So they weren't able to always pin it in, and wherever Chris Jones lined up wasn't always an indication because it had Dunlap of you can single it out. So they've lined up Chris Jones to the right, on the right tackle, slid left that isolated the right tackle, and then dropped out, which meant they couldn't really help by the time they realized that Chris Jones is in the lap of Joe Burrow. And that all was set up the last game against Cincinnati and the Kansas City Chiefs. They saw something. They set them up. They said, we're going to run a base defense, because here's the one thing that people fail to realize. When they played, they said, look, we're going to lose to them. And not saying they said we're going to lose, but they said, we got a 50-50 chance. And in that 50-50 chance, we're going to show them one particular look that we know they're going to build their offense around. Because you got to remember, the last couple of games, who has been eating for the Cincinnati Bengals? Has it been Joe Mixon? No, it has not been Joe Mixon. Who's
last week
eating?
He ate.
No. I'm talking about against the Cincinnati Bengals. Who has been eating against Kansas City Chiefs? Who has been the spark plug, the unsung hero, the running back that usually has played well? You know who had 5 first downs last year?
I'm guessing Samaje Perine.
Yes, sir. T. Higgins had, I think, 7 first downs. Boyd had 3. Boyd goes down. You could repo those first downs, right? You knew they were going to handle business against Jamar Chase. They doubled Jamar Chase, which led to 6 catches, 103 yards, and a touchdown, and 5 first downs. 5 or 7 first downs by who? T. Higgins. Mm-hmm. So they doubled Jamar Chase and won the football game. Well, they doubled Jamar Chase, but they played a little bit more man coverage, but they also dropped and played zone coverage as well, but they dropped with an overload. Overload the offensive line. Get them to slide right, which sliding right now, Chris Jones is lined up an interior line. He's going against another guy who's a backup and gets beat. And they were so hell-bent on Perine being the guy that they limited Joe Mixon, who actually never got started.
Right.
Because in their mind, the game plan was our guy against them, right? What they call it? Burrowhead. Oh, we were even talking about if Joe Burrow beats Patrick Mahomes, is now Joe Burrow the best one? No. Because we were already set in our mind that these things are going to happen. And Kansas City did a hell of a job and said, you know what, you're right. Everything you believe that you're going to do, we're going to throw a new wrinkle in there. I don't want to say they got out-coached. They got outmaneuvered. What the Kansas City Chiefs did is said, hey, here's our 10 tendencies, right? All right, cool. Now, Lou Anarumo and Zach Taylor, they made some good adjustments in the second half.
It was really towards the end of the first half. That's when it started with Kansas City slowing down. Yes. They started doubling Kelsey, which I don't know why teams don't do that full time.
Well, I mean, they already, but you can see Andy Reid. They had a game plan. They said, "Look,
definitely
no risk it, no biscuit. We're going for the jugular immediately, offensively and defensively."
Well, they needed someone to step up, and that was MVS. MVS had the game of his life.
oh my gosh, how about that pass in the end zone?
Mm-hmm.
Right? You go to the pass in the end zone, the MVS, you go, wow, it was a great catch. And it's like, oh, it was such a great catch. It was a split of the hairs. Then you just watch a replay. No, that was just a dime. Dude didn't have a chance. Right. It was like the defender fell, but the ball had already, it was like, yo.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, almost had it. Boy, you wasn't even close. In slow motion, you thought you had a chance.
Right.
In real life, you didn't even know you was in a car crash.
It was like standing in against Randy Johnson, like prime Randy Johnson throwing like 108.
Exactly. It was like, oh man, it was like, man, that was already a strike, bro.
Yeah, Mahomes put up 326 and 2 touchdowns on one leg.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would have been the conversation all offseason. I'm glad we avoided it because Mahomes is too special to be messing around with this guy's the best quarterback, this guy's the best. Like he definitely needed to beat the Bengals for sure. He can't be 0-4 against the Bengals. I get that.
But then how about the Bengals beat them because, like you said, Chris Jones didn't even admit it. Man, he didn't play his best game last year.
Right.
He didn't show up.
And that was another game. They were up, was it 21-3 at halftime?
Yeah.
And so, again, we talk about it with the Falcons 7 years ago. Like, where's the defense? And, of course, and that was the annoying part about all last offseason. It was like, oh, if you put 3 high against Mahomes, that's how you beat Mahomes. And as we saw, as he finishes his MVP season with another trip to the Super Bowl, there is no one way to beat Patrick Mahomes. That's just not how it works.
There's no way to beat a team that really know themselves, right? And sometimes you just got better players or better game plan, and the ball doesn't bounce your way sometimes. And hey, that's the game. But it was a great game. I thought it was cool. I thought it was fun.
How real is bulletin board material?
Oh, very real. It's very real, right? Especially a team. Cincinnati. Right? Talking trash is fun. I love what Joe Burrow said. It's like, man, it's part of the game.
Right.
But Cincinnati has, I think Zach Taylor lets those guys be loose. They enjoy it. They put the bullseye on their back. And it's going to work. And sometimes it's not going to work. And when it's not going to work, we, the media, are going to all of a sudden say all of this and, oh, that you can't fuel it. Man, it's nothing wrong with owning your own stuff.
Right.
You feel you're like, hey, I'm comfortable doing what I'm doing. So, it works.
Did you ever have an opposing city's mayor try and chirp you? Because I think that's when it was just like, hey man, like you can say if the players want to talk trash, that's one thing.
Listen, if they would have won, then what?
For sure.
But they didn't. So you get to go back and tell the mayor, hey, I've been in Cincinnati several times. The mayor got a little bit more on his plate to handle what's going on downtown Cincinnati than trash talking Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs.
That's like when the players are doing it, they have an outcome. And mayors, like every Super Bowl, the whatever cities they are, the mayors always make a bet, but it's like mayor to mayor. This mayor was like, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow has to take a paternity test to see if he's your dad. It's like, you're a mayor, dude. Like, let's calm it down a bit. Like, this, you want to do something to get the city riled up. I have no problem with that.
That's what happens when, that spotlight get on you. That red dot, you start talking, you start feeling yourself.
A lot of dip on that chip.
Yeah, a lot of dip. Not a lot of that chip ain't dip no more.
Oh, it broke off. He's reaching back in, trying to get the rest of the chip. Now the dip's all over his hands. He doesn't know what to do. He's a double
dipper anyway.
But it's like, so I know a lot of people who are like, bulletin board materials not real. They should already be focused. It's the AFC Championship game. Why aren't they already giving 100%?
It is real. And you also have to lie and say, I'm not listening to it. We just focus. That's what you have to do.
Has there ever been anything you genuinely didn't hear until someone asked you about it after the game?
Yeah, sometimes that does happen because you also are tuning things out. There's so much going on. Like for the Super Bowl, there's so many requests and so many things going on that they're already lining up when the teams are just like when the teams win, the T-shirts are already hitting the commercials.
Yeah.
Right. There's already requests. Hey, we need to talk to this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. So it gets super busy. So you try to tune it out somehow, especially with those 2 weeks. Like even for my stuff, for my Super Bowl stuff, man, I'm getting requests to interview. I'm getting asked to do all this stuff. And I'm like, yo, no, I don't, like I want to. I also like, man, there was time where I worked last year. I started we had production meetings at 9. Man, I had basically from like 9 to 3, I had something, and I had literally 30 minutes for lunch on the way somewhere else in the car to go. And it's like, and I just want an hour to myself. Because even when you're doing it, you're talking to all these different people. And yet the questions are all still the same. Who's going to win? Who do you have? Who's going to win? Who do you have? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And the great question I always hear, who's the toughest corner you ever played? Who's the toughest trash talker? And it's the same stuff. It's not very rarely if any of it is original.
Who's the worst trash talker you ever went against? That's
let me hold on. Oh, this guy, yeah, definitely.
Let me ask you this, because I doubt you've been asked this. Why do they give the NFC champion shirts and the AFC champion shirts and even the Super Bowl shirts? Why do they give you like a 6XL to put over your shoulder pads instead of just like the one that fits you?
Because most of the time you don't have enough time to take your shoulder pads off.
I feel like you could. I feel like they could give you some time.
No, because you want to stay in that jersey, bro.
I get the jersey. I definitely understand the jersey. But what do you do with that T-shirt the next day? You're not wearing that ever again. You're washing your car with it.
You have your right size T-shirt in the locker room.
So they're giving you 2 shirts.
Yes, they give you a game one on the field because you don't get to go back into the locker room. Like you don't go back in the locker room and shower and change up.
For sure,
right?
Yeah. No,
so you go in there, and that's why they just throw it on there. Because a lot of the times, your pads are either Velcroed or taped onto the jersey, so it'll stay. So you can't take it off.
Interesting.
That's why. And they go. It's right after the game. It's immediate. So it's just like, all right, that's what they started doing because it's easier to do that because it saves time for the broadcast.
So do you give do you keep the 6XL that they give you and like the 12 for the offensive lineman, or do you just give that back?
I don't know what happens to it. I can't even tell you what mine is either. I know what my regular shirt is, but I don't know whether
it makes sense to keep because you can actually wear it, although I'm sure you never have outside of that one time.
Yeah, you're right. I have it.
Yeah, why would you? It's a souvenir. Like it's kind of like a trophy. It's a wearable trophy.
My NFC Championship ring. I put it on for the first time probably in 10 years.
Still fit?
Yeah, so I put it on my index finger because I was like, yeah, we're going to go back next year, so I want one for this finger. Yep, nope, never happened.
I like the confidence.
Yeah, me too. Love the confidence.
I thought you were going to be Bill Russell, just a handful of rings.
Exactly. Disappointed.
So I think that's an interesting point too, because right now, some of these fan bases and these teams, they're saying we'll be back next year. We just got here, we know what to do now. How difficult is it to actually be back next year?
Man,
obviously,
it's terribly bad, right? Look at the Rams, what has happened to them. Mm-hmm. It's so hard to believe. It's so hard not to believe it because the guys you have it on there, like Hassan Reddick, he isn't going to command a whole bunch of money. But if you win the Super Bowl, it's just going to the playoffs and how he performs. Some team is going to pay him more than what the Eagles are offering him because they're desperate, right? Like, great example. Vic Fangio is the highest paid defensive coordinator He has been rumored to be with Dan Quinn, Sean Payton, all these different guys. And where does he go?
Miami.
To the Miami Dolphins for $5 million. Who saw that coming?
No. Yeah, not me.
Leverage.
Oh, yeah.
Desperate.
This is Bandit. He founded Underdog Fantasy so that humans who really love sports could play with their friends and win some big prizes. Tell your human to go to underdogfantasy.com today.
Let's get into something that here in Carolina. I want to hear, man, Steve Wilks doesn't get the job. There are people that are peeved, like truly upset. Oh, racist, this, that. Man, let's break that down. When you heard it, what did you think? Tell me some of the things that, like, don't use a filter. Tell me some of the things that you naturally thought.
I was shocked because it used to be a coach gets fired with Frank Reich, right? Or let go, relieved of his duties. Yeah. You got to go back to be an offensive coordinator or whatever your specialty is, and then you get another head coaching job.
Sometimes,
more often than not, I would say. So I was surprised. I thought for sure the second the Colts let him go, he was going to Jacksonville to go back with Doug Peterson. So I was just surprised he was even being considered. I don't even think I saw that he had interviewed with the Panthers. So to me, it came out of nowhere. But my second thought was, what does Steve Wilks have to do to prove he's a good enough head coach? I'm not saying he needs to be Belichick. I'm not saying he needs to be Andy Reid. But we see time and time again, and this is one of my gripes historically with Josh McDaniels, he has proven not to be a great head coach, and this is the third team that's hired him. Steve Wilks
second team.
The Colts technically hired him.
No, technically. Yeah.
He signed the paperwork, and then he said, what? See you later. But that's what I mean. Like, he has this like infinite fountain of job offers despite never really proving anything. Whereas Steve Wilks, he got one season with the Arizona Cardinals. They took a quarterback 10th. They played him 10 games, and then they took a quarterback first, and they said, Wilks, you're out of here. And then the Panthers, they played 500 ball out of under him for a dead team. He took over a dead team, revitalized them, nearly got them in the playoffs somehow.
Yes, sir. Yep.
And then he has to go interview for the job he just did. He has the proof of concept. Look what I did with a dead roster. Get me some good players and imagine what I can do. And they go, you know what? We're just going to get Frank Reich, who I think is a good coach. I do think Frank Reich is a good coach. So that's what makes it a little bit more difficult for me. In a perfect world, I'd love to have both of them on the same staff. But I know that's not how it works. And Steve Wilks right now has to be like, why? I did everything for this team. Why would I stay here anymore when I can just go somewhere else and be there interim and eventually not get that job too?
So let's go through it and let's use some headline clippings and all that stuff. Like my whole goal today is devil's advocate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just looking at it from the outside looking in, I don't have any inside track or any information. I'm just looking at all the stuff that I've seen, right? So Steve Wilks did a great job. He did a great job.
Yeah.
But then there's also some games he didn't do a great job. I like Steve Wilks. I don't care what you think. But also, too, I'm saying the Carolina Panthers is they're my team. Mm-hmm. So if that's my team, even when they do some things you don't like, I'm not going to fire off a tweet and say, I'm not going to the game ever again. That's a lie, because if they go to the playoffs, this is a fair weather city. You're going to have FOMO. It's not a lot of stuff going on in Charlotte. So if the Panthers make to the playoffs next year, guess what? You in there. Now, your problem is you're going to have to pay for those high-priced tickets because you gave your PSL up because you were so upset. So slow down, folks. Keep pounding nation, slow down. Because if Frank Reich turns this thing around, you're going to have to pay a little bit more than you want to for the playoff games. So be careful. So, Coach Wilks gets the job. They go to the Los Angeles Rams. How did that go? How did that game go for him?
I do not remember.
They threw screens. Remember that? They threw screens.
Yeah, now
they were averaging 2.7 yards per throw.
Was that PJ's first start?
Yes.
Yeah.
They said, hey, PJ, handcuffs. Okay? They play the Cincinnati Bengals. They go back and they play some good games. They play the Cincinnati Bengals. What happens to the Cincinnati Bengals? They got ran all over.
Mm-hmm.
Tough to watch. You remember that game?
Yeah, Joe Mixon, 5 touchdowns.
Yes. They had like 300 yards rushing.
Yeah.
Right? No, they had like 500 yards total, and 499 yards of it was rushing, right? But Steve Wilks, first thing he does is who did he fire? Phil Snow.
Yeah, Phil Snow. Yeah.
When Phil Snow was the defensive coordinator, how good was that defense?
Not.
Bro, they were top 10.
What? This year?
Last year, and then they dropped down.
I thought you meant for this year. Yeah,
for this year, they were in the top 15, top 20. They were playing okay. Right?
I mean, top 20 is bottom half of the league, depending on where they are in that top 20.
I love what you said. Top 20 is bottom half.
Well, depending where you are.
Hold on. So they were in the top 20. Let's say they were 22nd.
Yeah.
Okay. Coach Wilks is what kind of coach?
Defensive.
He used to be a defensive coordinator, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let me say this. Steve Wilks is a leader of men. Okay? They play the Pittsburgh Steelers. David Tepper was a minority owner for what team?
I'm going to guess the Pittsburgh Steelers.
And you play the Pittsburgh Steelers at home, and what happens to you with the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Lose.
You get embarrassed.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think that bodes well? Listen, how do you think that bodes well? And I didn't talk to Tepper, and I'm not talking. I'm just being a former owner myself. I'm an owner myself. If my company is going against my old company, all my employees know this week, y'all better be right today. This ain't the week to be sleepy-eyed, unalert, sleepwalking, going through the motions. Y'all need to be prompt, hell, early. 10 minutes early, it's still late. Y'all need to be up at 7 a.m. and you better have all the razzle-dazzle possible. What happens against the Pittsburgh Steelers?
I don't remember the game. Yeah, it's a loss. I don't remember it being embarrassing, but I didn't know the backstory either.
TJ Watt had a day. That was what I was saying. Remember? Dang, TJ Watt comes in, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are unbelievable.
Right.
Man, we got mollywopped. You beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You sign Josh Norman. You go down to New Orleans. You got to play them. What happens?
Loss.
What happens to Josh Norman and the New Orleans Saints? What happened?
Undressed.
Oh. Yes. Then the one guy you're not supposed to let catch the ball. Who catches the ball? Mike Evans.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Evans goes ham. I'm not pointing out all these things to say Steve Wilks isn't the guy. I'm pointing out all these things that's his body of work. These are the things that everybody said. He did a great job, and he did. He did a great job, but he also had some areas where going in a job interview, you have to bring these up. Do you not? You can't just act like they didn't happen. You can't say, oh, hey, and let me remind you, you let go of Phil Snow, and who's your defensive coordinator now? Al Holcomb. Do you know what the defense is ranked? If they were 22nd, this is where the defense went. They went down to 25, 27. But again, he did a great job, right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. What's that? That's my stocks right now. That's your stock.
All right,
going.
Flip it. What did the offense do? I'd flip it upside down.
Offense went great.
Yes.
Yeah. At times.
Compared to what he took over.
Bro, I understand that, but
What was the Matt Rule stat? The 17, was it the 17-point stat, or was that the Broncos stat? Yeah.
No, that was the Broncos.
Rules wasn't much different. Whatever it was, maybe 18 points, whatever it was.
Here's the thing, though. Are you comfortable with Steve Wilks being the head coach and keeping the current staff, right? And these all, I'm devil's advocate again.
Yeah.
Who did Steve Wilks bring in as his offensive coordinator? Did we hear?
For the interview or for the season?
For the interview.
No, I don't know.
Exactly. Me neither. I don't know either. But one of the things that I did notice that the Panthers kept doing, which I'm reading between the tea leaves, they started interviewing who?
I guess Ben McAdoo?
No, then defensive coordinators.
Oh, okay.
You remember that?
No, I genuinely don't.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not going to sit here and lie.
I appreciate that. So they started interviewing defensive coordinators. They brought in, it's reports. You could go on there and look at the reports because this is going to shape and change the landscape of things. And then when I say something, I'm going to give you a little nugget that kind of really shows you some things that'll make you go,
Now you're saying they were doing this while Wilks was interviewing or while everyone was interviewing?
They interviewed a ton of people. They interviewed Sean Payton. That's a report. Did they not? Sean Payton was reportedly had, I think, a defense coordinator, Vic Fangio, was on there. On there. Vic Fangio. Where did Vic Fangio go?
Miami.
Vic Fangio also was reported to be the defensive coordinator for Frank Reich too, right?
Yeah.
You know where I did not hear he was scheduled to be the defensive coordinator with? Steve Wilks?
Yeah.
Actually, there is a report that says Steve Wilks confirms Al Holcomb is going to be his defensive coordinator. You have confirmed after ownership has interviewed other defensive coordinators. You're basically saying, this is my guy.
Well, that's my question. Is it better to go into an interview and be like, it was his fault? Because I'm not hiring that guy. I'm not hiring the guy who throws someone else under the bus. I want to hear, no, that's my guy.
Ultimately, it's always the responsibility of the head coach. And here's the trend that I want to show you. All the head coaches who are going to be fired next year if things don't change, a la the Washington Commanders with Ron Rivera. Who did Ron Rivera fire? His offensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. But you hamstring your offensive coordinator with old Carson Wentz. Right. And then it comes out a report, Scott Turner did not want Carson Wentz. So you gave me a guy, I told you, nah, I don't want him.
How much can we believe a report like that?
I believe those reports because I have conversations with people.
Your boy Kellen Moore.
Okay, he hired Kellen Moore. They interviewed Kellen Moore as a what? I
believe head coach.
Little Opie.
Sean Payton.
Okay, yeah.
Mike Kafka. Ken Dorsey. Ahiro Evero. Denver's defensive coordinator last year.
DC, yeah. Pause. He's pretty handsome.
He's a good looking guy.
Great hair. Hey, a bald head guy always knows a good man with some good hair.
Shane Steichen.
Yes. Not ready yet, but anyway.
Frank Reich.
Okay.
Steve Wilks.
Yes.
Jim Caldwell.
Yes.
And that's all they have listed here from Panthers.com.
But then they have some defensive coordinators that they brought in, I believe. So if they're interviewing, think about it. If they're interviewing defensive coordinators and not to interview them as coaches,
right?
What are they saying?
Yeah, Al Holcomb has no future here, no matter who the head coach is.
So, and then there's a report. YC, find that report. There's a report on Panthers Wire that says, source, Steve Wilks confirms that his defensive coordinator will be Al Holcomb. This is just me. If you are interviewing for a job and they are interviewing coordinators on their own and interviewing you as a coach, and something comes up and says that I am confirming this is, and I think it was Albert Breer confirmed this is the coordinator. I'm just reading the tea leaves, and then it comes out that later that they have hired Frank Reich as their head coach. That tells me something in the interview process did not sit well with someone.
To me, it's like Steve Wilks probably knew he wasn't getting this job, and he was like, why am I going to throw my guy under the bus for a job I'm not even going to get to appease people who don't even want me? Because Scott Turner, Turner, he's saying, I never wanted Carson Wentz after the fact. Like, he didn't say that August, you know what I mean? He says it.
Well, you can't because here's why. If you say it in August, then you're airing your dirty laundry, and now the media and the fan base going, oh, he's not loyal. You're in a catch-22.
Sure, that's why say it at all, because
why say it at all is because I want another job.
For sure.
And I want everybody else to know, hey, I was handcuffed. I had to do it with one hand behind my back, and it wasn't all my fault.
Could Al Holcomb not say we were signing cornerbacks off the couch? That's why my defense wasn't where it's supposed to be?
That's a possibility, but here's the other part. Al Holcomb was a defense coordinator in Arizona. How'd that go?
For the 1 year with Steve Wilks?
Yes.
It's hard to say. That was a bad team. This is like a team void of talent. Still doesn't have much talent there. So it's hard for me to say that was his fault. This guy might be the best defensive coordinator of all time the more we talk about it.
He might be, but here's the other thing. Am I willing to find out at the expense of my organization again?
That's for sure what you have to weigh. Definitely. And I do think Frank Reich's a good coach, like I said off top. I do think he's a good coach.
I think so too, but I think Steve Wilks is too. But I also ask, who's the coordinator? Like, who are the coaches that were coming with Steve Wilks compared to who will come with Frank Reich right now based off experience?
So this is interesting because part of the reason Frank Reich didn't have sustained success in Indianapolis, all of his assistants kept getting hired elsewhere.
Yes.
Is it better?
Great assistants.
Right, but
and if anybody is like, well, who's his assistant? Oh, he's the head coach of
the Philadelphia
Eagles.
Right.
That's his guy. The 2 years that Frank Reich has declined started when his assistants go, right? Matt LaFleur, his quarterback coach was Nathaniel Hackett. He left for Denver. And how did the offense look for the Green Bay Packers this year?
Much
Struggle
worse.
bus.
Yeah.
Right? Pass coordinator or quarterback coach, Luke Getsy.
Mm-hmm.
He's the offensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears. You know where he was before that?
I'm guessing Indy?
No. Green Bay Packers.
Oh, Green Bay. Yeah.
So I'm just showing you, like, head coaches are managers of men and of the coaching staff and the players. But you can't just fill a guy. And here's the other part. When we talk about Ben McAdoo, I think Ben McAdoo is a serviceable quarterbacks coach. I don't believe that he's an offensive coordinator. He's not innovative. Right? I know, what's the guy? Johnson and with the Lions?
Ben Johnson.
Ben Johnson. Man, I heard he's like, he was a quarterback in college. He did mathematics and science, and he was playing football at the same time. Innovative. He creates, kind of like Kyle Shanahan, he creates. There are guys who are great play callers, but then there's also guys who are not just play callers, but they also innovate. Right. Ben McAdoo seems like a cut and paste guy. He doesn't seem like a guy that you go, man, that's a great play design. You go, oh, he pulled that from here. He pulled that from here. He puts a great game plan. He could do a game plan, but I don't think he could create plays.
So when I think of Frank Reich getting all of his assistants hired from underneath him, is there an argument to be made it might be better to just have very average coordinators just to maintain a longer stretch of consistency?
That is a great thing, and that's what he had in Indy, and that's what got him fired.
Right. Well, what got him fired was the the revolving door of
No.
quarterbacks.
I know, but it also has to do with your coaching staff.
Definitely, 1,000%.
And the play callers, right? You got to have some people that can help you keep your eyes on the prize and you not do everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what's going on. And so I'm throwing all of this at you to say, obviously something happened when they're interviewing all these people. They interviewed Kellen Moore, Opie. They interviewed Sean Payton. They interviewed all these people, and they go, it's like, hey, I like what he said. I like what he said. I like what he said. Let's put it together. And then the other part is, here's a part that people don't want to hear. There are very few defensive coordinators getting hired now.
Yeah.
Like, you better have a great offensive-minded coordinator or a great quarterback coach to help you, because owners are saying, I want offense only.
Yeah.
There are very few defensive-minded coaches who are head coaches that are actually successful right now. Name me a defensive-minded coach like Bill Belichick's defensive-minded winners coach. How are they doing this year?
Above 500 or right at 500?
There's a defensive-minded coach that's in Los Angeles Chargers who's pretty much on the hot seat right now.
Very much so, yeah.
How's he doing right now?
Made the playoffs in one of the tougher divisions of football.
Okay, and what happened? He blew a 27-point lead, there was speculation that he may not make it.
For sure, yeah, big speculation.
He sold his soul to get Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore was fired on a Tuesday at 12 o'clock. 12:07, he was hired as a coordinator of the Chargers. Where'd my pen top go? My energy level is high and it's right here, popped in my lap.
Right? It's interesting though, because the hottest head coaching, I don't want to say prospect, but prospect this offseason has been DeMeco Ryans, who is a defensive minded guy.
Yes, but he's young though.
Right. He came, although, and now I just saw Lou Amoroso, whose name I butcher every time I say it, is getting the Cardinals interview.
And so I'm so happy you mentioned the Cardinals. Here's a little tidbit. I never tweeted it out. I didn't want to say it. And so I can say it now because it's not a big deal. I was in Arizona filming season 2 of Most Interesting Jobs. And I was in Arizona heading to LA to do TA. And I'm sitting out having some phone calls. And there's a gentleman that gets off a flight. That gentleman was Dan Quinn. I said, hey, Coach, it's good to see you. He said, hey, Steve, how you doing? I said, man, I'm doing good. And I said, it's great not seeing you, Coach. He said, thanks. I said, no problem. I didn't tweet it. I didn't say anything. He does an interview. And he interviews, and a day and a half later, what does he say? I'll rather stay in Dallas than go to Arizona. Obviously, again, my point is Arizona has something going on. They're doing late interviews. There is so much going on that is obviously not sitting well with some of these candidates who are saying, you know what? Hey, DeMeco Ryans said, you know what, guys? Hey, Denver Broncos, nah, I'm good. I don't want to interview with you guys. Not interested. There are things going on in interviews, good and bad, for everyone that says this may not be a good fit for whatever reason. Look, I know, I put it like this because I have kids. I got some kids, like my son Peyton, man, you talking about tests, taking a test? My man can take a test. He knows how to test. One of my other kids, they don't do well on tests. The anxiety gets to them. They just don't test well. That doesn't mean they're stupid.
Right.
That just means not everybody tests well. Not everybody interviews well.
Definitely.
And things happen. I know earlier in my career, man, I would interview or I do meetings. Butcher, I would screw up a meeting. Not everybody interviews well. And sometimes other people interview better than others. And when that happens, when you get a candidate in your mind that interviews well, and then you get a candidate in your mind, you want the job, Steve Wilks, and maybe he doesn't interview well, but you have his interview compared to the guy who's not ready. Like, Kellen Moore is not ready to be a head coach. I know that for a fact. Several teams have told me, Steve, he's a great interview, but he's not ready.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. If he interviews well and he's not ready, what about a guy who is ready but doesn't interview well? What does that mean?
They'll never get that job.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's like Bieniemy. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like Bieniemy.
I'm not confirming or denying what you
For
just
sure. Yeah, no, I'm just looking at
because I've never
league.
interviewed him as an owner of a team, so I don't know.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask.
I got a couple of million. I ain't got no billion. So I don't know what that's like.
Not yet.
Like,
everyone subscribe. Press subscribe.
Press subscribe. I know what it's like to ride on a roller coaster. I don't know what it's like to own the whole amusement park.
Right. What if you were in that position? What's a question? I can tell you right now. Here's a question. What kind of coaches do you want? Do you want coaches that are eventually going to be head coaches, or do you want somebody where you're the smartest guy in the room? That's one of my first ones right there. Like, what does it look like for this team to be successful? Like, I want detailed information on where do you want to take this team. Like Matt Rule said, I didn't know this wasn't a 7-year plan. Newsflash, bro. Where have you been? Right.
The 7-year plan changed, obviously, when you got in, they realized we don't want you here for the next 7 years. Now, and I'm listening to him make this whole media tour. He's talking about what kind of coach he's going to be, what kind of players he wants. I find it very interesting, Mr. Bojangle over there changing his tune now in Nebraska. When I saw him up close here in Carolina, and I'm going, wow, this dude is a college coach trying to run a NFL team like these is boys.
Mm-hmm.
He thought he was in college. He thought he could control everything. Man, I heard so many stories about Matt Rule and what he was trying to do and orchestrate. He thought he was at college where he could tell the ticket office what to do. He could tell these guys what to do. Hey, we need these guys to be, I want these guys to be on advertisement. I don't want these guys. These guys are okay to interview. These guys are not. And he could say, and people are going to write, people are starting to write reports and articles about what we're saying on our podcast. So appreciate it. I thank you. But I'm telling you, Matt Rule did some things in the pros that he thought he was in college and it didn't fly well.
No.
I had a player tell me when I was there during the preseason, one of the guys told me, he said, bro, we got here at the bus and Matt Rule we had a meeting before the game of a preseason game. We had to be here like several hours before. And he has a team meeting saying, hey, guys, you need to be studying film. I don't want to hear music playing in the locker room. Y'all need to be studying your playbook, or some of y'all need to be watching film before the game. Newsflash, if you watching film 2 hours before the game, you are duped. You in trouble. Because ain't nothing happening in that game that you're going to watch film 2 hours before the game. That means the head coach better be changing something up, because I've seen something that requires us to change the game plan. Like, you can't do that.
Right.
He's talking about, I don't need to be having music. Y'all need to be looking at your playbook. It's already set. I'm looking at my playbook as a refresher, just to keep it fresh in my mind. But it ain't changing, Playboy. That's why the Oakland Raiders, Mark Trestman, I heard, changed the playbook like the day before the game because he had so much anxiety. They lost that game. And my point of all this is with Steve Wilks. Was Steve Wilks the best man for the job? I think he probably was, until all these other interviews of some of these veteran, experienced head coaches probably presented some things that maybe Steve Wilks was missing. And David Tepper saw it and goes, I didn't think of it like this. That's just my 2 cents. That's just something that I'm just observing on. Man, we getting people all the time talking about now, people are talking about the Brock Purdy. I had some people, at the bottom of our Brock Purdy thing, some people say, oh, Steve. So I think it's lazy of you to say that all scouts are lazy and terrible. Let me tell you something. I had several scouts tell me, hey, Steve, you right on about some of these scouts are lazy. Some of these scouts take other scouts' write-ups and cut and paste and give it to their general manager and say, hey, here's my job. I can tell you that right now.
I think what some people need to understand is, yes, it's football. Yes, it's professional sports. It's a job. However people act at your job, those kind of people have scouting jobs. Those kind of people are players. It's a personality trait. It doesn't the job doesn't dictate the person. The person is still the person.
Yes.
So if there are lazy people in other lines of work, there are going to be lazy people in these kind of work. Just like how there's good owners and bad owners. Like
like I'll use because we gender equality, right? Hey, if you got somebody right now got a lazy Vanessa working at their job, well, there's a lazy Vanessa working in the NFL office, right? There's a lazy Steve working at Marriott, and guess what? There's a lazy Steve working for the Colts, or there's a unqualified Jeff working for the Colts. Just like there's unqualified Jeff working for American Airlines.
Right.
Actually, not American Airlines. How about Southwest?
Yeah,
there's a lazy Jeff at Southwest.
And there's a Jeff busting his ass at Spirit, and no one knows him, and he should be at Delta, or he should be at JetBlue.
Or listen, there's a Karen that everybody hates at Frontier, but there's a Karen at American Airlines that everybody hates too, right?
Yeah, these are, at the end of the day, these are people, and people are often flawed. So yeah, they're bad scouts, they're great scouts, of course. Right? But
I had some scouts. I had some guys tell me, "Hey, bro, you right on." People, some scouts are afraid. Some scouts are afraid to say, hey, man, this guy can play because, well, what school did he go to? Right? Brock Purdy obviously was taught something in the, 9 months or however months he's been in with the San Francisco 49ers by Bob Greasy that going, hey, this kid has something. We need to keep coaching him up because when we need him, he'll be ready. And guess what? He was ready. Now, you put Brock Purdy on the Jets, and somebody say, "Oh, will he have the same success?" No, he won't. No. Of course not, because the Jets can't figure out what to do with Zach Wilson. They haven't coached him up yet. Right. They let go of Matt of LaFleur, and now he's offense coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams. You know why? Because they run the same system. Supporting cast, better players. Now Nathaniel Hackett's going to the Jets as offense coordinator, and guess what? They run the same offense. Matt LaFleur, guess who his big brother is?
Yeah, Mike LaFleur in Green Bay.
Mike LaFleur with the head coach of the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah,
who runs the same offense.
It feels.
And LaFleur was with San Francisco, and obviously at San Francisco, they were what? They were in Washington together. And who was that quarterback coach? Kevin O'Connell. Where did this start? 1984 with Mike Shanahan, San Francisco 49ers. And the quarterback coach was Gary Kubiak. Gary Kubiak and Mike Shanahan, they all get hired and go down to Denver. They go to Denver. Offense coordinator is now who? Gary Kubiak.
Yeah, Gary.
Mike Shanahan's the head coach. Then they get hired, go to Houston. Kyle Shanahan goes to Houston. Guess who was the interim quality control coach in 2006? Mike McDaniels. Mike McDaniel starts assistant wide receivers coach under who was a wide receiver coach at that time? Kyle Shanahan. Who's offense coordinator head coach? Gary Kubiak. Some guy named Shane Waldron comes on as a quality control guy. You know what Shane Waldron is right now? Seattle Seahawks. You know what Mike McDaniels is?
Yes. Finally,
Where?
yes.
Where? Where is he at?
South Beach, I believe.
Yes. And before that, where was he? San Francisco.
San Francisco, yeah. How much of a benefit would it be right now for a coach?
That was just a lesson on how deep this offense and this tree and these relationships are. Dated back to 1984 when Bill Walsh was the head coach, George Seifert, Jeff Fisher, all of those guys, Gary Kubiak, offensive coordinator Mike Shanahan, quarterback coach Gary Kubiak, how deep it goes and where it all started.
Wouldn't it be a massive benefit to have a coach right now counter to all of, if it's the same offense in so many places, wouldn't it be extremely beneficial to coach outside of that?
Yes, it would. But here's your problem. Are you willing to find out at the cost of maybe having now two head coaches who may, at the end of the day, you have to pay because it doesn't work out? You're already paying Matt Rule. One of your prospects is Steve Wilks, who has now come out and said, Al Holcomb is my guy. And everybody's looking for offensive-minded coaches right now. Hey, another defensive-minded coach, Mike Tomlin. Defense is unbelievable. What about that offense?
It's brutal.
Brutal. Right? I talk about my Utah Utes. Kyle Shanahan, defense is always in the top 10. How about the offense? Sucksville. How about the New York Jets? Defensive-minded coach. Defense, top 5? Unbelievable. Turnaround. How's the offense? Garbage.
Well, even unto that point, like, I think that's where personnel comes into play a lot too. Like, if they don't take Sauce Gardner, is that defense as good as it is? If Quentin Williams doesn't get developed as he did, and he wasn't, I think, the 3rd pick or something like that, if he doesn't develop, where's that defense? So that's a huge part of it as well.
It is, but you need offense, though, to win football games.
Oh,
after San Francisco 49ers.
1,000%. But it's like, hey, he's a defensive-minded coach, and that helps get these players to where they need to be. But if you're whiffing on picks, it doesn't, like when we talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers offense, they're taking running backs in the first round when they know their offensive line's depleted and getting beat all the time. Like, it doesn't matter how good Najee Harris is. If the people in front of him are turnstiles, he's going to get hit in the backfield every time he gets the ball. When you're taking a 24-year-old quarterback in the first round, like, he better hit immediately. And the jury's still out on Kenny Pickett, but he doesn't have a lot of rope left. He doesn't have a lot of rope left.
Yeah, but Kenny Pickett, you can see Kenny Pickett can play, but you also can see that that offense is pedestrian. That offense is not great.
And they got rid of that offensive coordinator, right? There's been so much movement, I can't remember. Oh, no, they stood behind him. That's right.
Yeah, they stood behind him. You can stand behind him and get you fired, too.
Yeah.
Continue. Hey, I stand behind my burgers. Okay. Arby's.
Poor Arby's getting a ricochet shot.
My whole point isn't that Steve Wilks doesn't deserve to be the head coach. My point is something obviously happened in the interview process with all these other guys as well that maybe put a little bit of doubt into some people.
Well, so if Frank Reich doesn't get a quarterback, which is obviously something the Panthers still need right now, is this just going to be more of the same that we saw in Indianapolis?
But here's the other thing. Even if you get a quarterback, you still need to get a wide receiver that can stretch the field. DJ Moore is a guy who he's not notoriously known for his speed, right? That's why the Jacksonville Jaguars jumped on the opportunity to get Calvin Ridley because you talk about 3 guys, right? And we'll get into this in the offseason. The Jacksonville Jaguars have 3 of the same people. They're all named differently because they're all intermediate route runners. They have nobody to push the field. Jamar Chase pushes the field, and what has that done? That makes Hayden Hurst better, right? That makes T. Higgins better. That makes Boyd better, right? You talk about all the things with Tyreek Hill not being in Kansas City. That was something that they had to work on. And MVS became that guy. That's why they got him for speed to push the ball down the field and let Juju Smith-Schuster, let Kadarius Toney, let Sky Moore, let all these other guys do well. Pacheco, the addition of Pacheco, he's a high energy run downhill. Eclair, he's not. They miss with him.
Yeah.
They found it with Pacheco at the 7th round and took over. Gerald McKinney is balling. Ridiculous. This offseason, I'm telling you, this offseason, boy, oh boy, is going to be amazing. You just see now, $224.9 million in salary cap. That just helps some teams. Oh, my goodness. They're going to be out paying for some folks. You're talking about shopping with your stomach. Oh, man. If last year people were over the moon how much Christian Kirk got. Oh, he's not worth $75 million. He looked pretty darn good, didn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, there's going to be somebody else that gets paid like that. There's going to be a guy that people believe that you overpaid for him. You got to overpay because the market dictates that.
I think you're going to see like double overpays because this
double. Yes.
Well, it's like double in the sense of I think last year we saw a lot of teams trade for wide receiver ones, AJ Brown, Tyreek Hill, players like this. I think you're going to see that again this year because this free agency class isn't, especially wide receiver, the most stout we've ever seen.
No,
so I think
a lot of tier 2s and 3s up in there.
Right. So it's already been floated. DeAndre Hopkins will be made available, and he wants a new deal. That? It's been floated. Jerry Jeudy might be made available, and I know there are some teams.
The Jag is going to be floated? No, say it ain't so, bro.
T. Higgins, maybe.
T. Higgins he's a starting wide receiver, bro.
I strong agree, and that's but it's like all these other wide receivers, even going back to Stephon Diggs, they were traded for picks in the 20s.
Yeah.
So now I think you might see some teams in the high to mid teens floating that first round pick.
I tell you who got a great pick. Man, the Chicago Bears, you're going to see the Chicago Bears are not going to get their money's worth out of Chase Claypool. Chase Claypool he got 3 routes, bro. 3 routes. He got a push off dig, a push off hitch, a big boy back shoulder go. Anything high point, he's good. But you talking about getting in there, getting dirty, and being a specialist and being a surgeon. You're talking about a malpractice suit coming because that man he is not a surgeon in a route runner. He cannot set up he does not set up the defender. That with tier 1 wide receivers, they set up the defender or generally defenders, multiple. Mm-hmm. He's not a top tier. He thinks, you see in some of his interviews, man, I'm one of the best wide receivers out there. No, you ain't. Not even close, bro. You're a wide receiver. Yes, you're on the squad.
No argument there.
But defensive coordinators are not shaking in me timbers, going, Chase Claypool is out there. Oh, Lord. Oh, no. Not happening. They better get them another wide receiver.
The 33rd pick for that is tough. Didn't look as bad the day the trade was made. It was like, all right, I kind of see what they're doing here because that Bears wide receiver room was so barren of talent.
No, they were just looking for somebody. The Steelers were looking for somebody to take this headache. Chase Claypool.
Oh, 1,000%, yeah.
Chase Claypool was walking around the Pittsburgh Steelers locker room like he was Jerry Rice, bro. Mm-hmm. Like he was the gift to the wide receiver room. I heard he was tough to deal with. High maintenance.
But yeah, the 33rd.
And here's
it's actually not even, it's the 32nd pick because the Dolphins got their first pick taken. So it's basically a first round pick for Claypool.
Here's the problem with Chase Claypool. Chase Claypool had a sensational rookie year. I believe when he was at Notre Dame, he should go to tight end. Chase Claypool had a stellar rookie year, and then you went to his file cabinet. You looked at all his routes, and people figured out how to cover him. Make him beat you with technique. He has no technique.
It's interesting you say tight end because when the Patriots were the week up to playing the Steelers this year, Belichick was talking about him, comparing him to tight ends. So it's very interesting. Yeah, everyone
because
else
he's
is still
slow. It takes a while for him to get going.
Right.
My guy, Darren Waller. They moved him to tight end because it takes him a little bit of going. It's not a knock.
Right.
Man, Travis Kelce is one of the best tight ends out there, and it takes him a little bit of time to get going.
For sure.
And look how it's turning out.
Right.
So I'm not knocking it, but I'm just saying when you walking around town like you out there, God's gift to wide receivers, and then when we look you up and we can't find you, like I got my routes right here. Let's see. Let me see. I'm looking at wide receivers with at least 40 catches, 2023 and 2022. Let me see. There's Michael Gallup, Michael Pittman, Chris Godwin, St. Brown, Garrett Wilson, still looking. Tyler Lockett, Zay Jones, Brandon Ayuk, this first page. Scary Terry, the Waddle. Hell, Cooper Kupp even got 812, and he only played 9 games. Drake London, Chris Olave, page 2. Josh Palmer. Let's see. Curtis Samuel, still looking. KJ Osborne, Tyler Boyd, still looking. Here, I found a guy. George Pickens. DeAndre Carter. He's up there. Page 3. Let me see. Chase Claypool, 15 games, 46 catches, 452 yards and 100. My old self at 44 can get that. And the slot, easy pickings, easy work. I can tell you right now. 46 catches? Man, that's really 46. Where my calculator? 46 divided into 17.
It's like divided into less 15, than 3. It's like 2.5 catches a game.
Man, I could do that at 44 right now, and I can tell you right now, I probably had 752 yards. I guarantee that. I could put your game check on it. But we'll get into that in the offseason. It's way too soon.
I'm excited. I like this wide receiver class too, so I'm excited to hear your takes after you dig into all the guys entering the draft, because there's a couple of guys I like, and I'll be devastated if you don't like them.
No, so I'm gonna tell you right now, all these wide receivers, I like them all.
Okay.
Right? And here's what I'm gonna say: every single one of these wide receivers in the draft, they bring something to the table. They may be lacking something, but they bring something to the table. Kadarius Toney, going back in my memory bank, I love Kadarius Toney. The only thing I didn't like about Kadarius Toney is he was looking for the big play home run all the time at Florida. He would catch a slant and he'll get 10 yards, go back 3 yards, trying to get the big home run. And sometimes, and I like to say, he would take bricks off the house instead of continuously putting them on. Right? That's the one thing I didn't like that I saw with Kadarius coming out of Florida. But I think every one of these wide receivers has something they bring to the table. And with the right coaching staff, with the right system, it could take them to the moon, bro. Like Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett was known to be, he was going to be the starting punt returner, the starting kick returner. And look at him now. Man, he runs so many unbelievable routes and clutch at the times that you did not expect it.
What percentage of a player can you truly understand just by watching film without knowing what's going on in here? Is it like 60%?
I would say it's 50-50, right?
Okay.
Because, what do they say? Pictures words 1,000 words. So there are things that I can see watching film that I go, I like this. Question mark on this. Let me figure it out. Let me talk to him, ask him a few questions. And then I can tell me something.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Different teams, different strokes for different folks. Different teams fall in love with different attributes. John Ross is a great example. Cincinnati Bengals at the time fell in love with his speed.
Right.
Then Zach Taylor comes in and he's a healthy scratch the whole year. They say we have no intent of playing him. We don't want him to get hurt because he's had some injury problems. We're going to move on. The
Giants.
New York Giants pick him up because they need speed. Didn't work out. New York Giants also picked up Coleman from Baylor, speed guy.
Yep.
He got drafted to Cleveland because of his speed. But you couldn't get it going because there are some things that he was not coached at Baylor, so he didn't understand the grasp all of the offensive concept, so he was always behind the 8 ball. Could he play? Yes, if he knew what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't know what he was doing all the time, so he wasn't able to play with speed because he played hesitant.
So the offense, I think, that's going to get dinged for this draft class and be most compared to those Art Briles Baylor teams is Tennessee. How hard is it to come from like that kind? Because I like Jalen Hyatt a lot. I think his speed plays at the next level. But how difficult is it to make that transition from an offense where everything's so dialed up to? Because I would argue Ohio State has a similar offense in terms of the quarterback knows where he's going before the play. Everything's kind of drawn up ahead of time. But those wide receivers translate at a crazy rate in recent history.
And here's why those wide receivers translate. Look at some of the quality of players that they're going against. So they're learning how to beat the jam. They're learning how to get off and play through physical play. Well, that's one of the traits of a wide receiver. Can he catch the ball in the crowd? Mm-hmm. Can he set up the defender? Can he beat press coverage? Because you're experiencing that. Right, I played in the East-West Shrine game, and that's coming up. I played in the East-West Shrine game. Man, I'm playing against Colorado. I'm playing against Colorado State. I'm playing against Wyoming. I'm playing against Air Force. Air Force, they were told us Air Force is when we had a trick play, you better execute it, you better be perfect because you will never beat our military men with the same play again. They don't make mistakes twice. They only make mistakes one time. Right? So I'm not playing great athletes. I got to the Shrine game. I'm playing in practice. We're doing one-on-ones. I'm going against a dude from Texas. Man, that dude jammed the snot out of me. I'm over there. I give him that little, that Wyoming. I'm playing a Wyoming corner. I give him a little shake. Hey, I'm like, oh, I get jammed up. I say, hey, run that back. Let's go again. Because I wasn't prepared for that. Right. Now I had to figure out on the move, hey, that little Wyoming release, 8-9, let's get this out of here.
Yeah.
I look, when I got jammed up, I walked over there. I had this mental calculator. All right, 1 + 1 - 2 + 3, right? Bang. That's 2. -2 is 0. Add 3. That's 3. That's a win. Let's go. Lined up, gave him that 3-step. Oh, excuse me. Yeah. Caught it, spinned it, looked at him and said, hey, try me again. You got to be able to do that. So what I showed the scouts is, I showed them, hey, he can make adjustments. But I had to make adjustments on the fly because I didn't experience that. I never went against a Pac-10, a Big 10, Big 12. I never went against a huge Power 5 corner who that's how they play all the time. So I had to make adjustments. Then when I got to the league, I'm going against guys. I got to go against a guy. There was a guy named Hart. Man, Hart played at Notre Dame. Man, we come up, Hart used to abuse me. I got sick of Hart doing that. He told me, oh, you little young Utah don't know how to get off that jam. Let me tell you something. Hart was my little buddy for that whole year, the rest of the time. I used to give Hart that work. Hart taught me a lot, man. And I'm not trying to talk down to him. He's here in Charlotte coaching. I talk to him till this day. Harp gave me that work. That was the best thing for me. He bullied me.
Yeah.
But I didn't go home crying. Nah, I went to work. I went in the lab, started watching film. What am I doing? So I started giving him that two-step. He started coming, leaning in, jamming me. I started jamming him. Bow! That's the adjustments that you got to make. Not everybody is going to make the adjustment because I was taught one of the best coaches. Fred Graves taught me how to play football. He taught me how to read coverages. He taught me how to make adjustments. And then I also learned. And so I just had a lot of good things. And so that's the thing. These young guys, when they get, and coaches, when you get into an organization, you got to have good coaches. And you got to also have a good coach that other coaches want to be around because they know, hey, nothing against Steve. But Frank Reich is coming here and they're going, okay, man, Frank knows how to do it. Frank has some experience. All I'm saying is watch Frank Reich and the Carolina Panthers, what kind of coaches they bring in and what kind of expertise and what kind of history. Steve Wilks was a defensive coordinator with Missouri, right? When he got let go. I don't know. I'm just asking. Where did Missouri finish that year defensively ranked?
I'm sure they improved if he got back to the league because I think that's where a lot of people get bothered by Frank Reich. Well, let me just say this.
Reich. I'm just going to say, go ahead and look it up, somebody for me. When Steve Wilks was there, where were they when he was, before he got there, and then when he left, where were they? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there like devil's advocate because
I understand.
That data is always what people don't really look at when they're talking about a guy.
But it's also like Steve Wilks has the Cardinals job for a year. He has to go to Missouri just to get back into the NFL. Frank Reich has this job with the Colts for 3-4 years and then immediately gets another head coaching job. I think that's when people are just like, well, if he has to go back to college just to get back to a defensive coordinator.
But here's what I would tell you. He was offered some jobs with some pro teams that he declined.
I'm sure. Yeah. There's always more to the story.
I'm just telling you, like legit. He was like, nah, I'm good.
Right. I'm sure he wanted to get that taste out of his mouth before he came back to the NFL. I'm sure that the Cardinals job rubbed him the wrong way. I'm sure how it was handled.
Absolutely, it should.
Right.
That's just like Wisconsin. Looking at Wisconsin, their offense was. I know Bobby Ingram was there. You know, he was the offense coordinator. Receivers are leaving. Receivers can't catch. Head coach get fired. They bring in a new head coach. Offense coordinator's not retained. Man, there's a lot of things that go into why. There's a lot of ingredients that goes into why cake tastes like. So I'm just reading this information. Despite positive progress, the Missouri's run defense concluded the season ranked 124th out of 130 FBS schools. The 227.8 rushing yards allowed per game was the second most allowed by Missouri's defense in the last 25 years, second only to 2016, Barry Oldman's first season as head coach.
So it sounds like they were clamping up on the outside.
They gave up 458 yards rushing to Tennessee.
They gave up 458 yards to Tennessee that year. On the ground.
So
that sounds like the Cincinnati Bengals game.
They're playing the Bengals. Yeah, I know the game tape they watched that week.
In this long season in charge of the defense, the Tigers struggled not mightily. They used the word greatly. 4-2-5 defensive system, particularly against the run. Of Missouri's 13 opponents, 7 of them rushed for over 200 yards. In-state opponent, Southeast Missouri State even racked up 294 yards on the ground.
Yeah, they've got a hell of a program.
They got a 4-week stretch of getting molly-whopped, torched, bamboozled, ran through, choo-choo trained.
How long was he at Missouri? Was it just the year?
Yeah, just that year.
Just that 1 year.
Yeah, well, he was back in the league.
Yeah.
But so he didn't recruit any of those kids. Missouri's not.
Hey.
He did.
Don't take the job if you ain't comfortable with the people.
I didn't say he wasn't comfortable, but it's like how much of that was. It seems like personnel seems to be a problem with him everywhere he goes.
Yeah. Hey, all I'm trying to say is there's a reason for things. I don't know the reason, but I'm just kind of saying, hey, let's go down the road and figure it out. Let's hold hands, skip down the road and figure out why this is considered a bad neighborhood. Let's go during the day, not at night, and let's not have a whole bunch of money in our pocket, but let's just figure it out. So I'm not saying that Steve Wilks is the person or isn't. I'm just saying when I get my data, it ain't good.
Is it possible he's just really an offensive guy? Like he's been lying this whole time, Steve Wilks? Because that Panthers offense was humming. I know that much.
Yeah. He's a leader of men.
Definitely.
Here's the question, though. When you look at Steve Wilks and you look at Frank Reich, who would you say is an X's and O guy and who isn't?
Yeah, I mean, I would give it to Reich. He's also believes Carson Wentz is a good quarterback, so that's tough.
He sure does. He does believe Carson Wentz because he was with him. But you know what I love? He was also willing to say, hey, I stood on the table for him. We got to move on. You rarely see that, though.
For sure. I guess we'll also see if he does it again.
So he bet not. I'm going to tell you that. He bet not. Listen, I'm going to ride with my team. Listen, I was a chameleon. I changed when Baker got here. And, hey, let's go, Baker. I ain't doing it this time.
I was going to say,
Look, I'm going to tell you right now, if you got somebody y'all talking to, if my Panthers got somebody they talking to, that I'm already like, nah, And that list is, I got a short list. I got the person I'm not naming, and then it's Carson Wentz. Do not bring Carson Wentz here. Not to fight for the starting job. That man's a backup. Let that man live his best life as a backup.
My genuine first thought when Reich was hired was, I think they're trading up for one of these quarterbacks. That was my first thought.
Yeah, he's a quarterback guy. He's a quarterback guy.
Yeah,
but we don't know what he's going to do with Matt Corral.
That's also true. But what was Corral? Third, fourth round guy?
Yeah, but he's sitting around.
He's sitting around because he's got an injury, and we also don't know how he's going to recover from that. So that's part of the equation too.
That's true. Liz Frank, he'll be all right. He's a quarterback. We don't need him.
He's never the most mobile guy.
Man, we got into a lot of good stuff right here.
Oh, yeah. That's what we do.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm Steve Smith Sr.
Coley Mick.
This is Cut to It. Hit that subscribe button. Appreciate it. We see you guys next week.
See you next week, Arizona.